It was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives. The sun was shining, the flowers were in full bloom, and every seat was filled with friends and family, eager to witness the beautiful union. The groom stood at the altar, smiling nervously. As his bride walked down the aisle, her white dress flowing gracefully with each step. But just as the ceremony was about to begin, an unexpected scene unfolded, one no one could have imagined. The groom's mother, known for her strong personality and protective nature, suddenly stepped forward. Without warning, she raised her hand toward the bride in a shocking display that left the guests frozen in disbelief. The bride caught her wrist mid-air, stopping the moment in its tracks. Her eyes locked on the woman who was moments away from becoming her mother-in-law. Gasps spread through the crowd, whispers growing louder as the tension filled the air. Everyone was wondering the same thing: what had led to this? Why here? Why now? In front of everyone they loved? And most importantly, how would the bride respond to such a public challenge on the most important day of her life? What happened next would leave the entire wedding speechless. Only moments earlier, everything had seemed perfect. The music had been playing softly, the scent of fresh roses filled the air, and the bride had been glowing with anticipation. But beneath the smiles and polite greetings, there had been an unspoken tension lingering between the bride and the groom's mother. Friends close to the couple had noticed it during the engagement. Preparations, a quiet disapproval. Love was never fully voiced, but always present in the older woman's eyes. Rumors had quietly swirled among the guests that morning. Some whispered it was about family traditions. Others hinted it had something to do with the bride's past or the way the wedding plans had been handled. The groom, torn between the two most important women in his life, had tried to keep the peace, never realizing how fragile it had become, as the mother's sudden action played out in front of hundreds. The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, unsure if they should intervene or simply watch. The groom's hands clenched at his sides, his expression a mix of shock and helplessness. And yet, the bride didn't flinch. She stood her ground, her calm defiance hinting that there was far more to this story than anyone had been told. The bride's grip on the groom's mother's wrist was firm but controlled, her eyes steady and unreadable. Guests leaned in, trying to catch even a fragment of their exchange, but no words had been spoken yet. The tension hung so thick in the air that even the breeze seemed to pause. The groom's best man exchanged a worried glance with the maid of honor, both silently questioning if they should step in. From the back row, an elderly aunt whispered to her neighbor about a heated argument she'd overheard the night before in the hotel lobby, voices low but sharp, the words too muffled to make out. Some thought it was about a missing family heirloom meant to be worn by the bride. Others believed the issue was far more personal, something rooted deep in years of unspoken resentment. Meanwhile, the wedding photographer, unsure whether to keep filming or lower his camera, caught the groom's expression change. He wasn't just shocked, he looked as if he had just connected a piece of a puzzle he didn't want to solve. The guests could sense it too. This wasn't a sudden outburst. This moment had been building quietly, step by step, and now, in front of everyone, it was about to come undone. Every eye in the garden was locked on the scene unfolding at the front. The music had stopped, the officiant frozen mid-sentence, his hands still holding the ceremony notes. The groom's mother tried to pull her wrist free, but the bride held on, not in anger, but with a quiet strength that made the moment even more unsettling. The groom stepped forward, his voice starting to form words, but they caught in his throat as the bride turned to look at him. It was a look that spoke volumes, a silent plea for him to stay where he was. Some guests rose slightly from their chairs, sensing something important was about to happen. The maid of honor's fingers tightened around her bouquet, her gaze darting between the two women. Somewhere in the back, a child's confused question to her father was quickly hushed. The floral arch swayed gently in the breeze, petals drifting down, their delicate beauty at odds with the charged atmosphere. The bride's calm expression began to shift, her lips parting as if to finally speak. The groom's mother's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something fear perhaps passing through them. Then the bride drew in a slow, deliberate breath, and the crowd leaned forward as one, bracing for what was about to come. Just as the bride opened her mouth to speak, a sudden voice cut through the tense silence, not hers, not the groom's, but from somewhere in the crowd. A man's voice, sharp and urgent, called out the bride's name. All heads turned to see a tall, well-dressed guest stepping into the aisle, his face pale but determined. Whispers erupted instantly. Some recognized him as a distant relative of the groom's family. Others swore they'd seen him with the bride before the wedding. The groom's mother's expression shifted in an instant. Her earlier defiance now mingled with something else. Sony's. The groom, still rooted to the spot, glanced between the man and his bride, confusion clouding his face. The unexpected guest didn't stop walking until he was just a few steps from the front. "There's something you all need to know," he began, his voice carrying over the hushed murmurs. The bride didn't release her grip, but her shoulders stiffened as if bracing herself for impact. The crowd was on edge, the air charged with anticipation. The wedding, once a picture of love and celebration, had now become the stage for secrets that had been buried for far too long. And in that moment, everyone realized they hadn't seen the worst yet. The garden fell silent again, every guest holding their breath as the man in the aisle stopped, his eyes locked on the bride. "She wasn't the one who caused the trouble," he said firmly, glancing toward the groom's mother. A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. The bride slowly released her hold, her hand falling to her side, though her gaze never wavered. The man went on to explain that the missing heirloom, the piece everyone had been whispering about, had been misplaced days before, but not by the bride. It had been taken to keep a family secret hidden, one that, if revealed, would change how people saw the groom's family. All eyes turned to the groom's mother, whose composure began to crack. She tried to speak, but the groom stepped forward. His voice steady now. "Is it true?" he asked. The silence that followed was louder than any outburst. Finally, the mother's shoulders sagged, a reluctant nod confirming it all. The crowd buzzed in disbelief. Just as it seemed the truth had finally surfaced, the bride smiled faintly and turned to the unexpected guest. "Now," she said softly, "tell them the rest." And in that moment, everyone knew the story was far from over. The guest hesitated for a moment, scanning the crowd as if weighing the weight of his next words. "The heirloom wasn't just jewelry," he said at last. "It was proof of something. Proof that the bride's family once helped save the groom's father's business when it was on the verge of collapsing. Without them, none of this wedding, this celebration would even be possible." Gasps rippled through the guests. The bride's calm demeanor suddenly made sense. She had known the truth all along, but she'd chosen silence to protect the family's dignity. The groom turned to his mother, realization dawning on his face. Her earlier anger, her resistance, it hadn't been about the bride's worth, but about fear of that truth coming to light. Tears welled in her eyes, and she stepped forward, her voice low. "I was wrong," she admitted. The bride released a deep breath, the tension in her shoulders finally easing. The groom took her hand, pulling her closer. Just as relief began to settle over the guests, the unexpected guest added quietly, "But there's one more thing. The heirloom wasn't lost. It was given away by someone in this very crowd." The air shifted again, and the celebration teetered on the edge of yet another revelation. All eyes darted around the garden, searching for signs of guilt. After a long, tense pause, an elderly uncle in the second row slowly rose to his feet. His voice trembled as he admitted that he had given the heirloom to an old friend in need, never realizing the chaos it would cause. A collective sigh moved through the guests. The heavy tension finally breaking. The groom's mother stepped forward, her earlier hostility replaced by humility. She placed her hand gently on the bride's arm. "I should have trusted you from the start," she said softly. The bride nodded, her eyes warm but steady, accepting the apology without words. The groom wrapped his arms around them both, sealing the moment with quiet grace. The officiant cleared his throat and laughter rippled through the crowd as everyone seemed to remember why they had gathered in the first place. The ceremony continued, now lighter. The earlier shadows replaced by a genuine sense of unity as they exchanged vows beneath the flower arch. The bride glanced at the guests and thought about the day's twists and turns. Love, she realized, wasn't just about the perfect moments. It was about facing the storms together and still choosing each other in the end.